So we know that schools are key. We also know that our well-being as children is a much better indicator of life satisfaction later on than, in fact, academics. So let us look then now at how positive psychology and positive education can and must be incorporated into education policy, and how well-being can be adopted across the school curriculum. To this end, I have the pleasure to introduce our panelists, who both have a deep understanding, not only of the frameworks that inform education, but also actually from their own experience in it. It's my pleasure, and I see him over there, to introduce Sir Anthony Seldon. If Sir Anthony, if you can please join us. Sit down. Please come in. Please come in. Make yourself comfortable. And Lucy Bailey. Thank you, Lucy. Well, Sir Anthony Seldon, actually, to do some justice to his incredible life, it would take me a lot longer than the time allocated for this panel today. But apart from his many books and so on, I will concentrate on his role in education. He's currently the president of IPEN, I call it, which is International Positive Education Network. He's the former Vice Chancellor of Buckingham University, former head of Wellington College, and he doesn't know it, but I went to listen to him speaking at Wellington College many years ago. Where, in fact, in 2006, he introduced well-being and happiness classes in that school. Lucy, he's the CEO of Bounce Forward, which aims to equip children and young people with the skills to thrive, not only in this century, but in general. But just as importantly, because it's part of equipping them to thrive, has the goal to support teachers and parents in the UK to develop young people's psychological fitness, mental resilience, and emotional well-being. So, with that. Is it on? Okay. So with that, I think I have, well, I would have many questions for both of you, but let me start with Sir Anthony. Let me start, perhaps ideally I'll have time for a couple of questions for both of you and a common one and so on. So positive education, Sir Anthony, what is it? Why and how do we implement it in schools and universities?
So thank you very much for having me here, and what a fantastic event it is here. And I'm just going to, with your permission, just ask everyone just to turn up and be here now. So I'm going to ask everyone to put these things in your pocket. These things are doing unbelievable damage to you and to young people. How many years did it take after we knew that smoking was causing extraordinary damage and widespread death? Did it take before we had proper programs? So let's put these away. And more importantly, because that's a don't, but you can carry on with them if you want to die later today. Let's just take a moment, and this is making the point. So if you just close your eyes, and even lovely Richard Layard, who says he gets bored when he does this, embrace the boredom, hug the boredom, and just close the eyes and feel your bottom. Well, don't feel your bottom, but feel the bottom on your chair. And certainly don't feel anybody else's bottom, please. It's not that kind of event. And just so, yeah, just get the shoulders balanced and your head nicely balanced on your shoulders rather than having the head anywhere else. Just keep it there and keep your feet on the ground. Just feel the energy just circulating and any tension coming out. because this is foundational. And breathe in. Some people consider it radical and dangerous, and to be doing breathing exercises weird and wokish. Woke on. And inhale and exhale deeply. And inhale coming in and exhale. And just notice already how much more we can be in life. Keep breathing deeply. How much more we can be in life than we often are. And this is relevant to education. So opening the eyes, foundational in all mental health is the ability to live with ourselves. In all mental unwellness, it's agitation, it's taking us away from ourselves, it's relying on artificial stimulants. It could be your phone, could be alcohol, could be drugs, could be antidepressants. So positive education, which I first came across, I'd run a school called Brighton College, and my own daughter found it hard to go to sleep. She was off on a year after school before uni, and was in Vietnam working with very basic school, and she couldn't cope, and it was all too weird for her. So I took her through a deep breathing exercise, and I was changing from this school, Brighton College, to Wellington, and she said, after a week, she said, "Dad, it's working," and she found that breathing exercise. What is that about? It's about helping a young person live with their own self, without alcohol, without stimulants. It's helping boost that person's efficacy. It's helping them to be the best that they can be. And so I went into a new school called Wellington. I came across Marty Seligman. We became very good friends. I came across Richard. I'd known Richard a bit before that. And then we founded Action for Happiness, which was Richard's brainchild and the genius of Mark Williamson in the audience as our chief exec of Action for Happiness. And we founded that 12 years ago. And it's all about positive psychology. It's all about working at the top of the waterfall. And it's all about helping to build efficacy and the sense that, yes, we can. Yes, every child. Yes, they might come from a broken home. Yes, they might come from a very poor home. Yes, they might be very disadvantaged. But yes, they can. Yes, they can. And now I'm in a school which I was asked to go to just over a year ago, where the head was murdered and the daughter was murdered, and that wasn't great. And the husband, he died. There hasn't been the inquest yet, so can't say any more. And that wasn't so great because it happened right in the middle of a school. Now, schools are very, as you all know, are very sensitive communities, particularly if something happens to people in authority, or indeed to children. But to people in authority, this happened to somebody in authority, a wonderful, luminous figure called Emma Patterson, the head, and her 7-year-old, beautiful, extraordinary daughter, and to the father. And it was troubling for a lot of people, but I so much use positive psychology with colleagues in building us through that. Don't catastrophize it. Build from strengths. Work on what is wholesome and good. I mean, this wasn't a la-di-da, bit of indulgence. This was real stuff. I mean, you're helping people for the rest of their life. I mean, trauma, as we know, embeds deeply. So that was just an important experiment, and I think that here we are, just last thought, how much more it's needed. I mean, our young people are not going to be as healthy as their parents in aggregate. You might contest that figure if you want to. And they are not going to be as wealthy as their parents. To imagine that giving just more money is going to solve, often the problem is money unwisely spent, and or the sense that money is going to be the key to it. It's not. It is, so that's a bit challenging. So, of course, we need to work together to have a more equitable, fairer society, but we need to implant well-being and happiness, as many of the greatest teachers in the East and in the West, in the South and in the North have said since the beginning of civilization. And it's going to be more important as we come into the greatest existential battle for us all, which is AI. Now, I mean, AI, it's eating people's lives. I was speaking just earlier in Westminster, and the taxi driver here no longer needs his knowledge, because why on earth would he need his knowledge? And the knowledge, for those who are unfamiliar with London, is the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years that taxi drivers used to have learning every single street and building in the Greater London. It's now worse than useless. And what's happening to taxi drivers will happen to all of us. And unless we start at last prioritizing what is wholesome, what is good, what is true, what is just at the heart, what is human, what is love, what is curiosity, at the heart of our schools, then where are we going to be? And this AI revolution is going to eat us all for lunch unless we can start in our schools prioritizing those things. Exams are necessary, but they're not sufficient. Academic work is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The word education, forgive me if anyone's heard me say this before, I really have not met a single education secretary anywhere in this country, and my goodness, we've had 10 in the last 10 years. We've had 10 in the last 10 years, which says a lot about government's priority for education. I mean, it's so important that you're just chucking a lot of people at it. That not one of them knows what the word education means. What does the word education mean? Who said that? Don't shout out. Can you see me at the end of it? It means drawing, leading up. Absolutely, as you say. It means leading out. And what happens if schools don't lead out? It remains inside. It remains dormant. It can create depression, a sense of unfulfilled talent. Unless we can have these schools that draw out what is inside, all the intelligences, including, above all, the intelligence to know how to live, then it will remain dormant. So, positive education, not an option, an utter essentiality.
Indeed. Thank you. Indeed. Then, Lucy, if I may turn to you, how do we then provide these skill sets of people, to educators, to how do we apply these concepts in school, and how do we involve the parents in this, virtuous cycle?
So thank you, and first of all, thanks very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here on it feels like a moment in time, definitely. And if I may, I wanted to just take you on a bit of a journey. So I'm CEO now of Bounce Forward, which is a tiny charity in the UK, still trying to embed positive education in secondary schools in this country, which, let me tell you, is a very, very difficult thing to do. My journey started in 2006 when I was working in a local authority, Hertfordshire County Council, and we worked with South Tyneside and Manchester City Council under the leadership of Richard Layard, who had the idea of thinking about how could we narrow the gap between the children that were doing well in school academically. That's what we cared about back then. We didn't really think about well-being as we do today. How can we improve children who are doing academically bad? And we actually invited Marty Seligman's team from the University of Pennsylvania over to the UK, bringing the Penn Resilience Programme, which was a 18-lesson curriculum, which at the heart of it teaches psychology to children in a way that matters to them, in a way where they can understand it, in a way where they get involved in role plays and discussions. By the way, most secondary school children in this country say less than 5 words in any one classroom. How can children learn if they're not able to talk with one another? Children also in secondary schools only ever really engage with the children that are the same age as them and as the same academic standard as them. How on earth can children learn how to be in the world unless they're able to talk to different people and to explore, you know, the sense of who they are as individuals? So what we did in that early day with the Penn Resilience Programme was ask that question: would teaching wellbeing, it's a broad term I'm using because it's really about a psychological intervention, can we teach the Penn Resilience Programme, and what difference would that have on the academic success of our children? And that research project tracked about 4,000 children over 3 years. Very good outcomes. We're talking about health outcomes, we're talking about academic outcomes, and we're talking about wellbeing outcomes. This is unheard of in education, thinking about that across broad outcomes. And we had good results from it. You know, the biggest unintended outcome was for the teachers. Because back in 2006, Martin Seligman's team insisted that we had teachers in a room for 10 days. 10 days, come out of school and come with us and work with us for 10 days. And the first 5 days was just trying to persuade them what this thing called positive psychology was and why it mattered and why on earth it mattered for education and what difference it was going to make. Those teachers, came out of unhealthy relationships, they lost weight, they gave up smoking. Like it was a journey that they came on. Fast forward a few years, and Michelet, I'd consider a friend over the years, and to say, look, okay, we know that this one, set of lessons can make a difference. What about if we carried that on? Because what we noticed through the PRP research was that we saw really good outcomes at the end of so we taught 18 lessons, we tracked them for a year, great outcomes at the end of that first year. We tracked them for another whole year, not teaching them anything new, just from that very first set of lessons. Yes, we still saw really good outcomes, not just for all populations, but for those that need it most, special educational needs, those that are not achieving national averages, those that had high levels of anxiety and depression. By the end of the first year, it petered out. Right? So what would happen if we carried that on? So we then, off the back of some research that was done at the Paul Hamlin Foundation, that looked at, went across the world and looked at what are the elements that could put together a well-being curriculum that not only focused on psychological health, but looked at relationships, that looked at mindfulness, that looked at how to be a parent, how to be a better person. And it bounced forward, and with several other people, we put together a curriculum which is now known as Healthy Minds. It's a 5-year curriculum. It's taught 1 lesson per week through our secondary school education. That's the good news, because at the end of that research, again, we tracked these children, 10,000 children over 5 years, again, unheard of in education. We found really good outcomes across all of those 3 areas. But I sit here today in 2024 as somebody who has been championing that curriculum for the last 15 years. I cannot get a government department to support it. We spent about £1.3 million on that research project and produced those great outcomes. We have then worked during that time to bring the cost of that curriculum down to just £2 per child per year. £2 per child per year. But can I get a government department to support my charity to embed this across education? No. Can I get corporate organisations to help us to deliver this work in the schools? Yes, some. That's how we're staying alive at the moment. Can I get grants to help us, extend what we know through Healthy Minds and to do that more, particularly with the work that we've done around parents? You cannot think about children just in isolation in schools. You have to take that language out and help parents understand how to raise psychologically fit children as well. So we work in this ecosystem. The final thing I would say, just in terms of the history of this, is that I said to you, we took teachers out of school for 10 days. Those training programs, we had 150 teachers in a room for 10 days. It was magical. Now that £2 per child per year is because we deliver that training in pre-recorded CPD. A teacher has to sit in a classroom, press play, watch me talk to them about why this is so important, engage in the activities that I suggest and so on. It's not a nice alternative. We would much rather have teachers back in the room where we can talk to them, where they can develop those relationships themselves so that they don't go back into schools feeling alone, that they're the only person that realises that this is the difference that it can make, because it's a lonely place to be. But that's how we've had to change in order to survive. So, you know, I think all the things that we've talked about today, about relationships, about the things that we need to change, Healthy Minds is just one example of something that could work. We know it works, but then what next is the challenge that we have.
Well, thank you. In fact, that Dr. Murty mentioned this morning exactly is the feeling of loneliness and then direct contact. Now, you've partially answered the question I had for both of you, which were, what are the obstacles that you have found? And we're all prone to path dependency. Any suggestions of what we can do about it? But I understand that do we have to go into Q&A now? So that will be my question, prerogative, sitting here. So I'll ask that first question because I think it's very interesting. Okay, so we're clear what we need to do, but what are the obstacles or the challenges that we face in doing it?
Stop focusing on exams and start focusing on well-being. That would be my answer.
And the government and business and all the other sectors of society.
Yeah, but for me, of course education is, academics are important, of course they are, but, particularly in secondary, I think primary, early years in primary schools get this right more of the time, but I think in secondary schools, I don't think there's any debate that they've become exam factories. It's a pressurised environment, whether you're a student, whether you're a member of staff, whether you're a head teacher. And I think, and what does it prove really? So for me, putting well-being at the heart of education policy has to be something that the next government takes on.
And in the global south? Obstacles, or how do we apply this?
I just so agree in awe of everything that Lucy has been saying there. I mean, what does it take for, look at this room here, a lot of men who've run the LSE, mostly men, who run LSE, did they not understand that happy students and happy staff will lead to a flourishing LSE? And if they, like so many heads, they're so unpresent, even when they're physically present, they're not present because they're not being mindful. They're so full of anxieties. I mean, everyone's face, we own every face. And there was a lady, did you see the lady? Who noticed the lady on the desk downstairs? Hands up, anyone who did? Right, okay. She said, I said, are you happy? And she said, I am. I said, why? She said, because some lovely people have come upstairs. And I said, what's a lovely person? And she said, a lovely person is someone who looked at me and smiled. I mean, how many more times do we have to make it clear that there is no conflict between performance and well-being? Well-being does not come at the expense of performance. Well-being is the necessary sister and brother of performance. And ultimately, I think we might prefer well-being to performance. But unless we have sufficient performance, we won't have an engine and an economy, and we won't have great institutions. And it's young people want to strive. People come to LSE, they come to schools and colleges globally because they do want to learn and to do better. But we need to be prioritising their well-being and not seeing them as an either-or. And the penny doesn't drop. Why? Because our politicians have prioritised ruthlessly their own success at the expense of their and their families' well-being.
Well, may I now turn this conversation, yes, to the audience?
What Works Centre for Wellbeing also run the campaign to end loneliness. And I wanted to ask, what I like both your leadership on this area. It's so very obvious that social emotional skills development works. We know it works in schools. It has outcomes for well-being, for social connection, for education and for health. What do you think is stopping measurement of well-being in schools and a widespread adoption of social emotional skills? We've known this for at least a decade now. What's stopping that change happening?
It's because there isn't a standardised way of schools being able to measure it. So we think of good schools as those, the first thing that a school gets graded in terms of good is their exam results. There isn't an exam at the end of Healthy Minds, and by the way, I don't want there to be one at all, but I think, you know, just the idea of, you know, measuring well-being, and, you know, we've got, What Works Wellbeing have done such enormous work on helping us think about how you measure well-being and providing us with the tools to be able to do it. But unless you've got those drivers for schools to think about it, not just in terms of interventions, but to think about it in terms of school improvement and planning. And unless you get that into those systems, it just becomes an add-on that teachers are, you know, tired of having something new initiative. It has to be at the actual centre, which is why we work with parents, because parents choose which schools their children go to, but you have to be a pretty brave parent to say to your friends, I'm going to send my kids to a school that's in special measures, but because they do well-being right. So it's actually, you know, we've talked today about what we can all do. I actually think we all need to think about the decisions that we make for ourselves and for our children, and the impact that that's making on each other.
So you've done amazing work. You have done, let's big round of applause. I think that what we can do is keep on. There will come a turning point. We're not there. It was a turning point when people with smoking realised that it wasn't great. It was bad. Carrying on as it is. How many of you have had a urge to look at your mobile phones since you put them away? Hands up. Okay. Now imagine that was alcohol. Or imagine that was heroin. And how's it different? You know, we all of us, what are we all looking for? What do children look for? What do teachers look for? What even prime ministers and education secretaries look for? They look for love. And in our male-dominated, brutish, fast-moving world, the inner qualities of what makes us human, which is that great existential struggle I spoke about, we lose it. What can we do? People get it. More people get it this year than they did last year about what really matters in life. Look at the fact of mental unwellness rising despite affluence rising. And you can't correlate it and say it's all because of poverty. Of course, poverty is a contributing factor, but actually there's so much mental unwellness amongst the well-off too. They realise that their pursuit has been pointless. What's the value of it if you've lost your children, lost your partner, lost your sense of dignity and your principles? So we all have to work. We are all moving in the right direction. We need to be patient and strong and proud and keep going.
Well, thank you. We run out of time, but thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this amazing well-being content, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.